conference prompt of resonances describes the concept in a largely positive light, as a provocation, evocation, and stimulation that creates deep, meaningful connections. Yet, as we all know, as much as we resonate with certain things or people, those alignments can change over time, turning into dissonance. Acting as a metaphor for relational exchanges, resonances describe the interaction between two or more audio signal frequencies where similarities amplify and strengthen each other. However, maintaining resonance requires constant effort, and it can easily decay or create less desirable effects. Furthermore, there are times where the similarity is so great that it causes even more problems, such as a feedback loop where an output is sent back into the initial system. Here, the same signal builds on top of itself, amplifying, but usually in an uncontrolled way that creates dissonance. This effect is evocatively articulated by the British term Howlround, which describes the unpleasant sound of microphone feedback, where an audio output loops back into the microphone, building up resonances until it results in a loud screeching sound. This effect isn't just limited to audio either, with video cameras creating visual loops with layered self-referential visuals, and then also digital algorithms creating echo chambers or model collapse in artificial intelligence. The term Howlround describes this negative outcome in an organic and evocative manner, which is important because artists often experiment with feedback loops for creative effects. In artistic practices, dissonances are imbued with creative potential, working alongside resonances for conceptual and aesthetic purposes. Through the tension between resonances and dissonances, order and chaos, signal and noise, artists have the ability to make audiences look differently at the world around them. As such, they highlight the clash of personal lived experience with the people and environments that surround us, as well as the expectations and reality that unfold through our relational exchange of being in the world. This paper takes up the metaphor of resonances and feedback loops to interrogate the experimental video games of Korean artist team Loopntale, made up of Youngju Kim Hoyoun Cho. Based in Seoul, a megacity that's famously embraced smart city technology, the duo uses interactive storytelling and video to engage audiences with non-human perspectives, including animals and machines. The term Howlround helps to frame not only their creative manipulation of feedback loop and resonances as within their interaction design, but also the conceptual critique of human relationality to the creatures and objects that surround us. Using an art historical methodology of object analysis alongside critical theory, this presentation deconstructs how artists structure critical engagement between audiences and the material and social structures of video game design. So, Loopntale confronts players with the structures of video games, their expectations, and their unconscious interactions. Their name is a portmanteau of the words loop and tale, referencing the ways that video games tell stories through repeating actions and choices. Players engage with the game somewhere in between the structured repetition of the interaction design and the branching or open potential of their actions within the game world. For the artists, quote, "Even within the same loop, new interpretations and narratives are always possible," end quote. And these variations are not always literal. Rather, the artists are interested in retracing the same path and how that may offer new ways of looking at the world, reconsidering the relationships between agents, human and non-human, non-playable characters, other audience members, and artificial beings, as well as the body and the environment. Despite the implication of loop and tale as a smooth and contained process that follows a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then begins again, in practice, the artists often create dissonant worlds. Their interaction design and visuals are often abstracted, requiring players to approach space, time, and story from alien perspectives. And it's through this tension between the normative expectations of video game design and the disruption of perspective or interactions that the artists are able to draw attention to how gaming systems embody certain unquestioned assumptions about humans, animals, society, and artificial life. Conceptually, Loopntale turns against the everyday, against images that we engage with habitually, processing through motion without really paying attention, seeing, or feeling them. By constructing moments where the smooth process of the game loop is disrupted, Loopntale creates what Roland Barthes calls the punctum of photography. That is, a moment that pricks the spectator to cause a personal, emotional connection to an image that may otherwise have just been an intellectual curiosity. For Barthes, this punctum is often linked to elements of surprise, of things that he cannot recognize or name. In the photograph, a small detail can make audiences look at the image in a new light, imbricating it with their own personal memory and experience. Like a photograph, video game players often habitually engage with games, focusing more on the rules of the game, actions that cause triggers, and larger missions or in-game goals than they do on the details that reveal where their minds and their bodies meet the game world. As such, the artists interrogate how the video game image can construct a sense of thinking, feeling, action, rather than the more commercial approach to game design that creates a kind of unthinking, reactionary participation with limited agency and ability to alter the outcome. In one of their earliest works together, called Hidden Protocol from 2019, the artists raised questions of agency and relational impacts through a multiplayer video game where human audiences and artificially intelligent agents share an environment. In a normal video game, simple AI is often used as NPCs or non-playable characters that produce a more interesting environment or push story forward for human players. Here, instead, the AI agents are the ones who play the game, earning or losing points when they spot each other in the virtual world. Agents gain points when they gain a line of sight on other agents, and they lose points when they're seen, while human audiences affect the outcomes by changing the environment to add or decrease terrain, which the agents then have to adapt to. Humans interact using their smartphone interface and view the changes on a large projection screen that alternately shows a skeuomorphic imitation of the environment from the viewer's point of view, and then also the point of view of the AI agent, as well as infomatic representation of the space as digital point clouds. These images fluctuate between human and machine visualizations of the world. Within this dynamic, the AI agents make decisions about where to move so that they can view and hide at the same time, and players interfere with the dynamics between agents. The artist's use of the term agents is notable, as this project interrogates who or what has agency within the game interaction, shifting power that's normally understood to be in the player's hands to the game itself. It highlights the way that the game system may only nominally enable the player to control events. Often, the functionality is more like pushing a button to create a reaction than it is actual agency to affect outcomes. Furthermore, in an interview with the artist, we also began to use the word witness to describe the viewing relationship between AI agents, in part due to the communicative blurriness of translating ideas from Korean to English and vice versa, but also because the idea of witness carries a more active connotation than viewing or spectating. A witness is someone who's present, sharing circumstances and not just watching. A witness is implicated and must make a moral decision to act or not act, highlighting more conceptual issues of agency that arise from this interaction between AI agents and human players. By challenging the smooth unfolding of the player's experience, Loopntale draws attention to the structural and conceptual functioning of video game loops as virtual environments that host relational engagements between various agents. As artists who often showcase their work in art galleries rather than commercial game platforms or console marketplaces, they're also drawing on the gallery's natural conventions of peripatetic viewing to create misalignments between the normative expectations of gaming and the actual experience of their spectators. In the gallery, viewers are expected to engage with many different types of artworks in a short duration, meaning that video games cannot expect players to spend a long time learning and playing through the entire narrative arc. People walk in and out, joining the game at any time, in a public environment that's not as comfortable as your living room, and also has the added pressure of other people waiting to try their turn with the interactive artwork. It becomes a non-linear play experience that further challenges the smooth functioning of game loops, while simultaneously constructing a collective form of play where one person's actions are left for another person to complete. During the pandemic, the duo had to shift one of their gallery exhibitions online. The resulting work, Mechanimal from 2020, imagined a virtual world managed by a human and populated by animal-like characters. In the artwork, the administrator has gone missing, and the creatures cry out for help as a timeline counts down. They cannot survive for more than 6 days without the caretaker's presence, and 3 days have already passed. During the pandemic, the abandoned architectures of the virtual space echoed the socially distanced environments of the real world, and engaged players in a digitally networked mystery narrative to find clues to discover what happened to the manager. Although the visuals of the game were structured as a single-player point of view, situated in a nearly empty virtual world, Loopntale integrated collective action through Twitter and later Discord social media feeds. Characters communicated using the social media feeds, and player actions would progress the narrative to try to find the missing caretaker. As players solved puzzles and progressed in the game, their progress was screenshot and then published to the social media feed. In this way, in-game elements like character relationships could leak out of the contained virtual world, and players also left their own traces of their activities behind. By viewing these traces, other players could watch and experience the actions and reactions of others, find information, and unlock levels. Yet, the way that the feed worked, every player's traces were published using the same anonymous social media account, with no username or identifying information attached to it. This meant that people could have conversations and share information, but their separate subjectivities were indistinguishable from one another. As a multiplayer game, played by a single player at any given time, Mechanimal challenged the boundary between the collective mass and the individual player, as well as the interior and exterior of narrative. The artist explained that within the social media feed, players could only provide visual clues through posted screenshots. As such, in order to help each other, they had to become creative in how they communicated to the larger group. Players figured out that when the automated screenshot occurred, they could position their virtual camera so as to give clues about the codes or other important elements for unlocking the next level. These communications were surprising to the artist, who did not envision how audiences would find alternatives or workarounds for the system that they'd designed. Here, the feedback loop of the game system was expanded to include new inputs and possible outcomes. Players took more agency for themselves than the designers had anticipated, and by doing so made the conceptual resonances of the project even more powerful, bringing together audiences that could work together collectively towards the end game goal, but doing so in a way that disrupted the original design. In visual arts curator Nicholas Bourriaud famously posited that human relationships could themselves become an artistic material, as a challenge to modernist utopianism that reinforced grand gestures and hierarchical ideologies. Rather than a top-down solutionism, he proposed that micro-communities could promote horizontal social exchanges, mobile perspectives, and diverse dialogues. His ideal was for art to focus on process-based and open-ended interactions that would unfold within the art encounter. This is an idealistic viewpoint that's been strongly critiqued by art historian Claire Bishop, who argues that Bourriaud's position is too easy, lacking the antagonistic understanding of social relationships that's crucial to actual democracy. For Bishop, democracy is not about collective viewpoints resonating, but should rather be thought of as a plurality that often incorporates conflicting positions. Quote, "Relational aesthetics are something not intrinsically democratic," she writes, "since they rest too comfortably within an ideal of subjectivity as a whole and of community as immanent togetherness." End quote. Without conflict, politics becomes authoritarian, and by taking this approach, artistic critique is depoliticized and defanged. My own position lies somewhere between Bourriaud and Bishop. acknowledging the power in paying close attention to social relationships or the unfolding of human encounters with the living and non-living world, while recognizing the essential function of conflict as a way to accomplish this close perspective. Artistic encounters, like anything, can become habitual. Audiences go through the motions, following expectations and behaviors that are ingrained through repetition and familiarity. As Barthes points out regarding the photographic punctum, quote, "What I can name cannot really prick me," end quote. By destabilizing recognition and habit, artworks can produce gaps where audiences must work to build their own understanding. In doing so, they must reflect on their own memory, which imbricates their subjectivity with unfolding experience alongside the artwork. While Loopntale does not explicitly draw narratives of conflict and discord, their interactive design implicitly challenges audience expectations and the ability to easily make meaning. In this way, their aesthetics enable resonances and dissonances to exist side by side, rubbing up against each other in a way that refuses the smooth flow of habit. Several Loopntale artworks turn against the easy functionality and interactivity that players often expect from video games, which allows for incommensurable experiences and perspectives to rub up against each other. In doing so, the artists ask users to sit with the inability to understand, feeling the friction, tension, and confusion of meaning-making. Their games are difficult, even impossible sometimes to navigate, forcing players to take up new perspectives and see the world from a point of view completely different than our own. For instance, their 2022 game Code and Cartography challenges the players to navigate a series of game spaces with unusual navigation rules. Players discover the map by moving through the environment, which is not unusual in video games. But in this instance, they also have to figure out the rules, dangers, and doorways on their own. This is a frustrating experience, trying to determine which keys navigate in which direction, what elements are solid or porous, dangerous or helpful, and what meaning lies in the overlapping of images, directions, and actions. Other projects like Tanchon Chronicle from 2023 also requires players to move through map-like abstractions, which have porous boundary interactions and generative layouts that are determined by the player's choices. 3 screens show different topologies simultaneously, taking on a claustrophobic path through the middle space of gray corridors, then bird's eye and worm's eye views that give the players overhead or underworld points of view of urban landscapes like bridges or roadways. Through these confusing, abstracted visuals, the artists draw attention to non-human points of view and relationships to the human architecture of the city. There's a machinic and animal vision that does not always align well enough with our own for us to even figure out how to begin to navigate it. And it asks users to pay attention to non-human beings, infrastructures, and systems that are often overlooked. The visuals of Tanchon Chronicle are sometimes similar to the effect of clipping through 3D objects in virtual space, where users are accidentally able to enter the back-end side of virtual environments. When this happens, it reveals the infrastructure behind the game illusion, which can be both a charming surprise, but also a frustrating limitation that sometimes breaks the game. In the digital realm, these unexpected errors are often called a glitch, which artists like Rosa Menkman sees as an opportunity for critical intervention into the material world of the digital. Glitch artists like Menkman embrace these errors as a chance to push codes to its limits, creating aesthetic disruptions that highlight the underlying infrastructure of the digital without breaking it so fully that it loses the ability to function. It's a difficult balance to keep the work in this zombie state of broken but alive that allows us to break through the surfaces and habits of digital engagement to reconsider the systems that structure our experience. For Menkman, media images neutralize or hide authorship and infrastructure beneath seemingly smooth surfaces, and, quote, "Through the distorted images and behaviors of machinic outputs, the viewer is thrown into a more risky realm of image and non-image, meaning and non-meaning, truth and interpretation," end quote. As such, the glitch state is a moment of unrecognition or confusion that gives audiences an opportunity to reflect and understand how their perspective is being shaped in relationship to the non-human agents of the algorithm, electronic data, and computational objects, as well as the other human agents that also circulate within the same space. By discarding control and opening up to unexpected interruptions, glitched images implicate users within the media that they're using and are being used by. Loopntale similarly sees, quote, dissonance in games as moments where meaning is suspended or destabilized, and we view these moments as spaces of potential where alternative understandings can emerge. These moments encourage the player to pause and look again, deepening and layering their relationship with the work, end quote. As such, Youngju Kim and Hoyoun Cho take up the aesthetics of glitch not as a visual style or a literal definition of glitch as something that breaks the materiality of the system, but rather as a conceptual glitch that disrupts the interactions expected from a video game. The artists glitch the conventions of button pushing, virtual space and time, as well as the relationship between player, character, and NPC. Leveraging the feedback loop of difference and repetition, the artists make resonance and dissonance live side by side, rethinking agency and action as generative forces that rely not on single individuals, but rather collective relations between human and non-human agents.